world-class university, a premier business and technology university of choice. KCA University is the successor to Kenya College of Accountancy, a company incorporated in the Republic of Kenya on the 11th of May 1989 as limited by guarantee.
By Dr. Gladys Bunyasi. Daktari, please.
Let us be on our feet for a word of prayer. Let us pray. Everlasting Father, it is a wonderful afternoon that we bow before your throne of mercy with thanksgiving in our hearts. We thank you, dear Lord, that you've created this opportunity for us as KCA University family and even our stakeholders, that, dear Lord, we may gather to deliberate on issues affecting our education. Dear Lord, we want to surrender ourselves unto the able hands. We thank you even for the speakers whom you've given us this afternoon. We surrender them to you, that, Lord, you'll guide them as we interact this day. Thank you for all of us, for those who are virtually watching and following us, those who are gathered here physically. Lord, we pray that may your presence and your Holy Spirit be in our midst as we start till the end. And this is a humble prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gladys Bunyasi. Now, I would like to invite ourselves to this session where we'll be discussing matters CBC, a brief synopsis of what we are going to have. The event begins now, and God willing, we should be done in the next 2 hours. And that's around 4:05 p.m. Now that we have heard the prayer, I would request the Corporate Affairs section to give us a brief documentary about KCA University.
A world-class university, a premier business and technology university of choice. KCA University is the successor to Kenya College of Accountancy, a company incorporated in the Republic of Kenya on the 11th of May 1989 as limited by...
of what has brought us here today. And the matters that we'll be discussing today are CBC as a curriculum reform in teaching and learning in Kenya that is going on right now or is being implemented. And this curriculum shift has brought a significant focus on the abilities and skills of our children and the, let's say, the methodologies that are being used in its implementation. Since there have been quite a lot of discussion that has been going on in the society, especially the preparedness of our learners to cope up with the changing environment, especially in the labor market. Indeed, we have had studies consistently indicating that most graduates from our colleges, in fact, not just in Kenya, but as well as in the Western world, that they don't feel like majority of them, around 54%, like they don't feel like they're quite well prepared for the labor market, despite the fact that they say the universities have given the intellectual ability that they desire. But this intellectual ability does not translate to the needs of the labor market. So there is that gap. And I know any curriculum that is worth its salt in the nation should be able to seal that gap. And probably we hope that the CBC is going to do that. Among ourselves, we have distinguished discussants, and some of them are actually my teachers. Just allow me to recognize one of my professors, that is Professor Kisilu Kombo. He taught me research methods at postgraduate diploma in education. Karibu, Professor. Yeah. That was just allow me. That was by the way. I just felt it was good that I recognize my teacher. And the philosophy I have personally is that if I am a teacher and my student does not become better than you yourself, then you are doing some injustice. So, Professor, I'm also a professor like you now. Okay. Thank you very much. In our discussion, we are going to traverse a wide range of current and emerging CBC affairs, including but not limited to the philosophy behind CBC and policy direction to guide the implementation of CBC at the university level. Now, before I invite the DVC to invite the VC to give us a brief introduction about the university and the gist of what we are doing here, just allow me to pose one question that was posed by Cynthia Scott in 2015 in her exposition, The Future of Learning. And she asked, why must learning content and methods change in the 21st century? And among the discussion, and a lot of the issues that we are going to have in the discussion, that would be an overarching idea on why must we change, why must this content and the methods in teaching and learning in our schools, not just the universities, why must it change in the 21st century? Of course, we have just seen the gap that there is, that mismatch in our graduates and the requirements of the labor market. In the first place, has our curriculum, the methods that we apply to teach our students, do we prepare them in a way that they are able to challenge the dynamism in the labor market? That is key for us, because if we check out students from the universities and they're not able to fit in a changing environment, remember what we do in school, we have a curriculum. This curriculum, is it consistent with the changes in the labor market? And true, it may be. But now, the students whom we graduate, they graduated with what we gave them. But when they get into the market, things have changed. How have we prepared them to adapt to that changing environment? That, among many others, will be part of our discussion today. At this point, it's my humble request to invite the DVC in charge of academic and student affairs, Professor Joshua Bagakas, to invite the VC. Karibu.
I hope you'll allow me to remove my mask so you can see who I am. Good afternoon. Welcome to KCA University. We want you to feel very welcome. We are actually very grateful that you have all made it here. I just want to say a few things before I welcome the Vice Chancellor to properly welcome you to KCA University. This conversation is timely. It's timely because a lot of us in higher education, we view the conversations about CBC as a conversation which should take place elsewhere and not in universities. In fact, I'm involved with one of the primary schools where I sponsor a program called Read Baby Read. And one of the journalists asked me, you are a university professor, what business do you have at a primary school? And we forget that those children in the primary school, one of these days they will make it to universities and they will be our students. In the same way, when we think about CBC, I think now it's making its way to, I think, Standard 6 also. So, grade 6 now. But soon, and very soon, they will be at the university. And so, universities have to also take ownership of this curriculum, as well as the methodologies which are changing. We do recognize that there's a lot of moving parts. In fact, as you noticed today's news, that the TSC is rolling out a program where a teacher will be teaching in multiple schools, they said using Zoom. You know, it's one which is going to be changing things so that we can have our children involved in IVDL, so that they can have the interaction across schools. I feel like I really want to go back to primary school so I can teach there. So I don't want to take much time. I just want to say that this is timely, and we are so happy that this conversation is actually taking place at KCA University, and I'm sure it will be ongoing. And I don't want to preempt many things about KCA University, because the Vice Chancellor will be able to talk about that. So I now want to welcome and invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Isaiah Wakindiki, to come and make his remarks and properly invite you to KCA University. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Bagakas. Our distinguished ambassador, the Principal Secretary, State Department of University Education, of the University Education and Research, Ambassador Simon Nabukwezi. We have Professor Njenga Munene, who is the Vice Chancellor of CITEC University, who is joining us virtually. Professor Ochieng Ongondo is the Chief Executive at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, which is spearheading matters curriculum. Professor Kisili Kombo, the Dean School of Education at Kenyatta University. Dr. Andrew Riech is a panelist in today's event. Dr. Samuel Muredi also will be a panelist in this event. We have guests who have come from the Hungarian mission or embassy here in the Republic, led by Ms. Caroline Kedama. We have our moderator for today, the very renowned Joe Ageo of Royal Media Services. Other members of the discussion panel, the KCA University staff, wherever you are tuned in, the KCA University students, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you to KCA University this afternoon, and I further welcome you all to our first public lecture series for 2022, and thank you for joining us in this special occasion. Our Principal Secretary, Sir, KCA University is seized with the opportunity to recurriculate university programs in line with the competency-based curriculum that is putting more emphasis on values, on knowledge, on skills, attitudes, and natural capabilities to pursue a profession based more on calling other than academic pursuit. At KCA University, we have started the journey to align our learning with the realities of the 21st century, and in this regard, our transformative agenda for the next 5 years will be based on our 4 strategic pillars: academic excellence, student engagement, digital transformation, research and innovation, and also pursuing sustainability and growth of the university. If Kenya is to be an equal player in the highly competitive and globalized economy, not as a consumer, not as a producer of primary goods, but as an influencer, university education must be refocused with a strong bias in research and innovation, and networks that focus on the whole learner. PS, I'm glad to inform you that in the last year, and during the university's intake, 97% of our new students are only those students who chose KCA University as their first choice. These are the students who are placed here by the Kenya Universities and Colleges Placement Service, meaning our university is not a second choice university. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the University Senate and the University Management and staff, and all the students of this university, I wish once again to thank you for honoring our invitation to this public lecture, and it's our sincere hope that we shall meet and exceed your expectations. I thank you, and you are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Isaiah I.C. Wakindiki, the CEO and Vice Chancellor, KCA University. I'd like to make a brief of the key discussants or the panelists that will be involved in today's discussion. And I'll begin with the Principal or Secretary, State Department for University Education and Research, Ambassador Simon Nambukwesi. Ambassador Simon Nambukwesi has a Bachelor of Education, Master of Education in Educational Planning and Management, an MA in International Project Management. He is a PhD candidate in International Project Management. In addition to these, he has a diploma level training in Institutional Management at Hiroshima University, Japan, and a pre-university training at the National Youth Service. With this training, Simon has had a successful career as a high school teacher, as a deputy principal and principal in a span of 20 years, ranging from 1989 to 2009. He has also served as Kenya's High Commissioner to Canada and Ambassador plenipotentiary and extraordinary to Cuba. His 11 years of service as a diplomat included being the director of Foreign Service Institute, which he worked to transform into the Foreign Service Academy for training junior diplomats, middle-level diplomats, senior diplomats, and 8 cohorts of ambassadors whom he took through induction course. The Foreign Service Academy served as a software power tool for the government by training diplomats and ambassadors from the Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa, in addition to coordination of scholarships from friendly nations. These made members of the Association of Directors of Foreign Service Academies from the IGAD region to vote Nambukwesi to be their chairperson from 2016 to 2019, when he left the academy to to head Europe and Commonwealth Directorate in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Abukwesi was appointed to the current position of Principal Secretary, State Department of University Education and Research, with effect from February 28, 2020, and he is optimistic about working with all stakeholders to improve university education and research. Kindly let us applaud Ambassador Simon Abukwesi. Our second discussant is Professor Charles Ongondo. Allow me to say, if KICD was an institution, I will be an alumni. Professor Ochieng Ongondo, a PhD, MBS, is currently the Director, Chief Executive Officer at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Before his appointment at KICD, Professor Ongondo was a lecturer of English language teacher education in the Department of Curriculum Instruction and Educational Media in the School of Education at Moi University, where he worked for 16 years and rose through the ranks of lecturer and senior lecturer to the associate professor. Prior to joining the university as a lecturer, Charles had 13 years experience as a teacher of English language and literature in English at secondary schools level in Kenya. Professor Ongondo is an associate professor in teacher education, a Commonwealth academic fellow and scholar who holds a postdoctoral fellowship in research methodology, University of Warwick, UK, a PhD in English language teacher education, the University of Leeds, UK, a Master of Philosophy degree in English language education from Moi University, and a Bachelor of Education degree in English literature from Moi University, and a Diploma in Education, Siriba Teachers College, besides other governance courses. Charles is a member of the International Association of Teachers of English as a Foreign Language, Language Association of Eastern Africa, and founder member and official Kenya Association of English Language Educators and Researchers. He is also a member of Kenya Association of Educational Administration and Management, and he has organized, attended, and officiated in and presented papers in a number of international conferences, seminars, and workshops. Karibu, Professor Charles. Let's applaud Professor Charles. Thank you very much. Professor Charles, I was in the Department of Educational Research, Monitoring, and Evaluation. Thank you very much. I go to my colleague, Dr. Rasugu Riech, whom we share a panel, research panel at KICD, a holder of Doctor of Philosophy degree in Economics and Education. Dr. Andrew is a senior lecturer in the University of Nairobi's Department of Educational Management, Policy and Curriculum Studies, Faculty of Education. He is a researcher and policy analyst with over 20 years of work experience in educational leadership, teaching, research in education and development in Kenya and several African countries. Between 2005 and 2010, Dr. Andrew worked at the Institute of Policy Analysis and Research, IPAR, as a research fellow and policy analyst in the senior sector, that is health and education. Between June 2019 and June 2020, he was seconded to Koitalel Samoei University College, a constituent college of the University of Nairobi, where he was appointed a pioneer director of the School of Education. He has a track record in research and consultancies in the government of Kenya and a wide range of international organizations, including the International Finance Corporation, IFC, the European Union Research Triangle International, RTI, Education Development Trust, formerly CFBT, UNICEF, USAID, World Vision, UNESCO, Education for Change Limited, Save the Children, the Africa Early Childhood Network, among others. Between 2011 and 2013, Dr. Riech was appointed a consultant by USAID to offer technical support to the Ministry of Education's task force to realign education to the Constitution of Kenya 2020 and the Kenya Vision 2030, whose report recommended the introduction of competence-based curriculum in Kenya. In 2016, the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Education appointed him a member of the National Steering Committee for the ongoing curriculum reforms in Kenya. Apart from being a member of the governing board of the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, UIS, which is based in Montreal, Canada, Dr. Riech is a life member of the Comparative Education Society of India, as well as a member of the African Network for Internationalization of Education, the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies, Women Educational Researchers of Kenya, a local research NGO, and he is also a member of the National Research Panel at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, KICD, among many other networks that he actively engages in. Dr. Riech's research interests include impact assessment, curriculum reforms, planning, policy research, program evaluation, impact analysis, as well as education and development. Let's have a round of applause for Dr. Riech. Thank you very much, Dr. Riech. At this juncture, I request the corporate team to pray for us documentally about KCA University. Thank you very much.
A world-class university, a premier business and technology university of choice. KCA University is the successor to Kenya College of Accountancy, a company incorporated in the Republic.
So in 1989, we were able to launch the Kenya College of Accountancy with the support of ODA, the British government support.
Given my role in the education committee of ISPAC, I was then appointed to the board of the college, which was a college training accountants and accounting technicians.
The college started off the operations in July 1989 in rented premises at the Westlands area of Nairobi with an initial student enrollment of 179. Over the years, the college witnessed rapid growth in student numbers, necessitating relocation in 1996 from Westlands to a more spacious facility at Paramount Plaza in Ngara area. The institution relocated again in 1997 to its current location at Ruaraka along Thika Road. The college applied and fulfilled all requirements of the Commission for Higher Education to be awarded university status. On the 1st March 2013, KCA University received its charter and has gradually increased the number of students. Enrollment currently stands at over 15,000, which includes students placed through Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service. KCA University offers certificates, diplomas, and degrees at undergraduate and postgraduate levels with effect from 26 July 2007. KCA University boasts of a modern instructional facilities and an ultra-modern library which seats 1,500 and provides access to an extensive collection of books, periodicals, magazines and journals, audiovisuals materials, and electronic databases. The Martin Oduor Otieno Library has an inbuilt network link and reliable wireless internet that facilitates research and academic discourse on a global platform. To make campus interesting and memorable, the university administrations work closely with the Student Association of KCAU, SACU, to ensure all students feel part and parcel of all outside class activities. The students participate in various sporting activities of their interest to grow their talents and special interests. Our strategic plan 2019 to 2023 projects 4 strategic pillars. A British Council report in 2016 in Kenya, Nigeria and Ghana ranks KCA as a top private university through a study on graduate employability.
We will not be pursuing just numbers, but we want to be pursuing quality aspects in whatever we engage in to make this a referral university. KCA is going to be one of them. In the coming few years, this shall be a referral university in the Republic of Kenya and if possible in the region.
Despite the COVID-19 related disruptions, we've remained focused, unshaken, and with the new face of leadership. We are an indomitable force that cannot be stopped. And to the great heights, KCA University, a premier business and technology university of choice. Premier business and technology university of choice.
All right, thank you very much. At this particular point, it's my humble duty again to invite the Vice Chancellor, to invite the Ambassador to make his remarks before we move on to the discussion.
Thank you, Professor. It's my single duty. Again, there is this hii barakoa. Hii barakoa inaficha mambo mengi kama ndevu. Our Principal Secretary, sir, I want to welcome you this afternoon to make some opening remarks on this discussion so that we can get the ball rolling. Thank you so much. You are most welcome, sir.
I can speak through the barakoa. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Isaiah Wakindiki, is also my friend. The DVCs, the CEO of KICD, Professor Ongondo, distinguished panelists who are invited guests, lecturers, students, members of the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'm honored to be here today. It's my first time in this university, and it's a very impressive place. I like the way students are busy with their activities and the way the university is organized. Two, I want to thank the leadership of this university for proactively thinking about how to implement the competence-based curriculum. That is thinking in advance. We talk about competence-based curriculum and implementation, but in most cases we are thinking about the basic education. That is primary education, lower secondary education, and secondary education. We don't think about university education most of the time when we talk about CBC. Yet, the actual sharpening of the minds and of the skills, the fineness of it is at the tertiary institutions where university education is central. I want to encourage the leadership of all our universities to think about how they will accommodate students who have been processed through the new system so that they continue in the system and sharpen them to the best level possible. We have had changes in education since 1920s, from the Felkstock Commission to the McKay Commission that introduced the 844. Even after 844, there were others like the Ramt Commission and so on. How were those changes so smooth without a lot of noise, without people raising a lot of questions, without even parents complaining? I recall when 844 was being introduced, That time we had just done Form 6, and we were invited. In fact, those days when you completed Form 6, you automatically did some job. And the most common job we did was teaching as untrained teacher. And we were told during the holidays, you go to the nearest center for training, teachers to teach 844. And there was no noise anywhere. We went, we were trained, and we introduced 844. How was it done so smoothly over time? And many countries changed the education system. But for us, in the last about 20 years, we have become noisy people. We complain about everything. We lament about everything. We resist everything. So I want to talk about the attitude. This change is informed by the dynamic environment in which we are. A lot of things that are changing. We ourselves talk about products of our universities vis-a-vis products of other institutions. What is their level of competence to do what they're expected to do in improving our economy? It is the attitude. Because in other schools, in other countries, schools actually implement competence-based curriculum. As a diplomat, I've been to many countries. When I was a teacher, I trained in Japan, and it was competence-based curriculum. I attended classroom sessions in Japan, and it was competence-based. It means you have a class where you can reach everybody. You engage students practically to learn by doing, by personal experience. That's what it is supposed to be to make teaching effective. We are talking about identification of talents and gifts in the students that we are handling. And this is a continuous process right from pre-primary through primary education, secondary education, and at university education level, where you are seen to be endowed with some gifts and talents from God, where you can do certain things with ease. It just needs a little bit of polishing up, and you are good to go. And at the university level, particularly big universities, Director KICD, Director General, we are talking about big classes, very huge classes, even a class of 600 students, 800 students in a big hall, and you use such equipment to lecture. That cannot implement CBC. If we continue with the lecture methods, we cannot implement CBC. The lecture method that we see in high schools is because of the congested curriculum. It is so huge. So you want to cover the syllabus, lecture method is the easier one. Even when you go to the lab, you tell students what to expect before they even do experiment. People who are here who are around my age, we did what was called SSP biology, SSP chemistry, SSP physics, where you learned by doing experiment, then you get the results, and those results become your notes. The teacher only ascertained that you did the right procedure, putting together the right things and getting the right results. We learned part of it by doing. When we went to the university, when we were training as teachers, in Kenyatta University, where some of you may have gone, there was the language lab, where you listened to yourself. You spoke, you listened to yourself, and you evaluated yourself. People who lived ahead of us, particularly those who were educated by the white people, if you listen to them speak, they don't have mother tongue influence, because they were compelled to practice until they spoke almost like the Buzungu himself. The way they wrote almost the same style. Those who went to Catholic schools wrote in a particular way. Those who went to Protestant schools wrote in a particular way. Those who went to African government schools wrote in a particular way. So even your handwriting will identify you according to where you went to school. These days we are in the mix of things, and that's why we need to start reshaping ourselves, positioning ourselves to be globally competitive. Ladies and gentlemen, even Albert Einstein said that every person is gifted in a particular way and has a potential to have a bias towards doing certain things with a lot of goodwill and a lot of commitment, and has a bias towards resisting certain things that he or she may not like. And he likened this gift of talent and abilities to a situation where you pick a fish from water and tell it to climb a tree. You'll find the fish to be very useless because it will not climb a tree. So identification of talent means reaching, monitoring, evaluating every student. And how competent are we in terms of following the evaluation procedure that we shall be given? How fair are we? How professional are we? How committed are we to doing it in the right way possible? When it comes to the university level, Vice Chancellor, there are universities where marks get lost around graduation time. Marks are lost, they're not anywhere. Or students start complaining about evaluation that is not right. We solve these issues. I'm happy we haven't had any from here, but we experience this. So when it comes to competence-based curriculum, where every individual participant, as an implementer, as an evaluator, will be expected to be fair, to be professional, to be accurate, so that we rate students according to their abilities. How well prepared are we? DVC, you talked about having done PGDE in education, I think, or somebody here talked about having been taught by a professor when doing PGDE. In some universities, in some countries out there that are very developed, every lecturer must be taught teaching methods. Teaching methods. How do you teach? How do you introduce a lesson? How do you conclude a lesson? How do you evaluate students? The basic things. You do that before you are promoted. I'm not saying that shall be done, but we are just thinking about how we make ourselves competent enough to implement competence-based curriculum. And I'm very happy that you are already thinking ahead of time. So there is need for training of implementers of the competence-based curriculum. Teacher Service Commission is talking about it, training teachers. And there isn't really so much to talk about because you need to know what you are doing. Because when you don't know what you are doing, it becomes extremely difficult. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's with great humility that I take this opportunity to thank the Kenya College of Accountancy, University, for inviting me to grace this occasion and give the keynote speech on the integration of competence-based curriculum, CBC, at high education level. Ladies and gentlemen, the evolution of the competence-based curriculum was triggered by the need to have a relevant and holistic curriculum of study that nurtures learners' potential, nurtures the learner's potential. That you don't just run over things and then at the end you evaluate the learner. No. you must monitor the interest of the learner. Learners will be identified by what they are interested in. So as an implementer, you must assess your class from the word go. Who is keen? Those who are not keen will come to class late, for example. Those who are not keen will come with things in their ears, making it difficult for them to learn. Those who are not keen will not pay a lot of attention. Those who are not keen will not do their assignments in that particular area. So you start identifying them early. And I'm saying this because even career guidance at high school level these days is at its lowest. Students, many of them don't even choose their careers. They don't choose their courses at university level. They just do KCSE and go home. Early this year, at the launch of the placement at KICD, there were over 700 students who were placed, but they didn't choose any university. They didn't choose any course. And my minister said, in future, those who don't choose should not be placed. Because why would you place somebody who has not chosen something? And it contributes to the tragedy of Africa. In Africa, a writer called Madivamba Rukini says, the tragedy with Africa is that people do jobs they don't like, because they end up in careers that they didn't know much about. So you are just there, and you do things as routine. So you don't do your very best. CBC is the product of the Task Force on the Realignment of Education Sector 2012, which was mandated to review and align the education, training, and research sector in accordance with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The reports and the policy documents that gave birth to CBC are based on societal needs that have motivated the need to align the curriculum at all levels. CBC therefore focuses on the acquisition of competencies that enable the learners to cope with life challenges. And in the AU Agenda 2063, we say, finding African solutions to African problems. That's why we need to start thinking. We make the learners to think. We need to make the learners to find solutions and to practically work on finding solutions. CBC therefore aims at equipping citizens with the skills for the 21st century and captures the aspirations of the country, which places emphasis on the learner's competence, on character development, on creating a spirit of patriotism in the learners, citizenship, and ability to coexist as a responsible citizen. As we get towards elections, for example, there are so many Kenyans who are careless. They follow money, and they'll be bought with the money to engage in conflicts and scuffles that they don't understand. Some of them will just have been given a mug of changa, and they'll fight. They'll fight for some people. So this kind of manipulation is what will be stopped when people go through the CBC system. Ladies and gentlemen, universities need to start realigning their academic programs to the requirements of CBC being implemented at various levels of the basic education system in the country. However, questions will emerge, for instance, how are the higher education institutions prepared to adapt to the CBC? Are the lecturers prepared to take on the challenges of change? Are they ready for a decentralized assessment and evaluation, where assessment and evaluation ends with you? You do it competently, you do it fairly, and you do it professionally. How about the numerous challenges facing the quality and accessibility of learning materials? Preparation of learning materials is another thing. We learned in primary schools, in secondary schools about, for example, you talk about a toad and a frog. And in your mental pictures, for some of us it was the same. A toad and a frog, just one thing. When I went to Japan, a real toad was brought and a real frog was brought for you to take notice of the difference. We learned in geography about rocks, and it was in theory. Talked about igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and so on. And the character is just told, and you write notes and you memorize. But in CBC, you must see the rock and describe it and differentiate it from others. You talk about soils, basic things in agriculture, and things that affect us in life. Soil sampling. Students will do the actual soil sampling to identify the pH and so on and so forth. It helps. Those who do agriculture and talk about agriculture equipment and agriculture economics must do it practically. And we did this somehow in the other system. For example, our agriculture teacher in high school, Form 1, Form 2, was a lady, and she knew how to drive a tractor. And she took us to a farm, and she engaged a moldboard plow, and then engaged the disc plow to show us the difference in the furrow slices as it worked. And you internalize it better. When you talk about the species of chicken, you go to the poultry houses. You talk about species of pigs. You go where the pigs are to see the difference. So will employers adapt to the new system and give more focus to skills than grades in their considerations? Because we are used to grades. We are used to the marks. But here we are talking about the competence. So that when we talk about a living certificate, it talks exactly about how a student is. While these challenges we have to deal with, we are better off with the challenges of the new system rather than stick to the 844 system. What I'm saying here is let's have the right attitude. In our country, parents abandon their children to the teachers. And they realized the importance of teachers when Corona hit us and schools closed down. In Uganda, they felt it better because the schools were closed for 2 years. So you stay with your child, you get to know your child better. But CBC is about complementing each other. The child goes home with assignment, works with the parent or a guardian, and will explain to the teacher that I was assisted in this way or the other way at school. And that is the way it's done in other countries. In Canada, where I served, that is the way it is done. Even when they talk about the March break, they used to have a summer break in July, August, and they have the March break, which is a shorter one of about 3 weeks. The March break is very academic, and you'll find many parents taking leave to take their children somewhere. Because part of the assignment is that you take the child somewhere to learn something and write about it and bring a report at school. And the parent must oversee. This is what other people are doing. So for us, when parents join in the complaints, it means they want to produce half-baked children who must take care of our country in a manner that I will say perhaps a small fraction of competence in doing it. It is therefore imperative that key players in higher education engage in the discourse on how to realign their university programs to the requirements of the competence-based curriculum. Ladies and gentlemen, why should higher education integrate CBC? As earlier noted, CBC has already been launched at the basic level of education, and as such, there is need to have the universities prepare for its implementation. The reorganization of academic schools, faculties, and departments will become necessary before learners join institutions of higher learning. The University Senate should take a lead in the exercise so that they execute their mandate as expected. Reviewing curricula to reorient it from knowledge-based to competence-based and incorporate different forms of assessment, content, and modes of delivery becomes very important. Offering CBC pedagogy to train us to equip them with the necessary skills and to develop short courses for teacher professional development becomes a must. Facilitating in servicing of teachers to prepare them to handle CBC students is another thing that is ongoing now, and I want to invite universities to participate. forming CBC implementation committees at university level, encouraging and undertaking research on CBC, enhancing the infrastructure by incorporating e-learning, like TSC talked about today, is very important. Because when e-learning becomes the main thing, and the implementers are not trained, it becomes a big challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, institutions of higher learning are well placed to help implement education reforms needed to produce graduates with the skills for socio-economic transformation of our country. The government, through the Ministry of Education and the State Department for University Education and Research, has been encouraging universities to take a lead, as the CBC will rely heavily on research. I wish to thank the KCA University for organizing this pertinent discussion. And with me is a very competent Director of University Education, Mr. Johnson Nanjakululu, who will be part of the panelists to take questions and discuss with everybody here. I want to assure you that the State Department will work hand in hand with universities to ensure that CBC succeeds in offering unwavering support. And for us, we have the right attitude, because when you are exposed, you know why others are ahead of us. You'll aspire to join them in the race. And I've seen Kenyan students out there, those who have gone through the 844 system of education, out there are very competitive. And some of them end up being the best in their classes, and some of the best universities out there. So let us all support CBC. It is the thing whose time has come, and it will help in the transformation of our nation. I thank you once again for listening to me, and God bless you all.
Let's do some good service to Ambassador. That was lukewarm. Lukewarm. Let's have a heavy cup. Heavy. It doesn't sound heavy enough for me. Yeah. Let's go the kilo style. The kilo style. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much, Ambassador Simon. Thank you. Thank you very much for that great exposition and the philosophical underpinning of CBC. I remember one time when we were learning, and actually I was going through another instrument, which was indicating that, of course, we deliver intellect at the university level. But now, how we connect that to practice is an issue. And now that is where I think we need to work around, change our methodologies in teaching and learning, such that we do not just have good and intelligent students outside there, but also students who are able to change with the changing dynamics in the world of work. Thank you very much for that. At this particular moment, I would like to hand over the session to my colleague. I'm saying my colleague now because we are doing it together, Joe Agel. I don't know how I can be a guy. It's good to be associated with Joe Agel. At one time, I facilitated an event with Joe Agel. Thank you very much, Bwana Joe. And karibu sana. For the next 1 hour, I will be having the panel discussion on integrating CBC in higher education. And Joe, you'll give us the next direction that we need to take. Karibu sana, Joe. As Joe picks up, I would like to recognize the presence of one of our alumni who is in the audience, who took a Bachelor of Commerce and MBA at KCA. This is none other than Mr. Hesbon Otieno, Assistant Secretary General, Kenya National Union of Teachers. Joe.
All right. I hope that's okay. that that is not my voice. Good afternoon, everybody. And as Prof was speaking there, I was actually about to say that there are so many professors in the room that I almost got tempted to call myself one for this afternoon at least, but I realized they've spent so much time in school to earn that title. So as we say in Kenya, nitaendelea kupambana na hali yangu. So let me now welcome up here. My guests have been so thoroughly introduced that I feel like just mentioning their names and they'll be up here. So Professor Ongondo, please, if you can join us up here. Please give a big hand clap to him. Professor Ongondo, of course, is Director General and CEO of the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Next, I want to invite Dr. Andrew Riachi, Senior Lecturer at the University of Nairobi. And last but not least, Johnson Nanja Kululu. Did I get it right? Wow. Okay, it's Director of University Education at the Ministry. Just the right people that we need this afternoon for a very illuminating session that has already started. I think the PS started us off on such a colorful note that it almost felt like this panel discussion is done. But let's see what else we can get out here. And gentlemen, karibu sana.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, the whole CBC conversation has been so loud in the country. It is everywhere. In fact, I think there's 100% chance that in my village in the next few months, there might be a few children called CBC something. Yeah. And Professor Ongondo knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right, so gentlemen, we are talking about CBC, and Professor, I'll start with you. There are a lot of people who associate you with CBC, I think rightly so. And if you were to break it down to anybody who's walking into this nation and asks you, Prof, I hear you are implementing a new system of education here, what is the most basic way of explaining to someone who has no idea what this thing is about, why we are changing our system and what we are getting into?
Thank you very much, Joe, and let me appreciate my boss, Ambassador Simon Nabukwesi, Vice Chancellor, and your team. I joined the moderator earlier on in saying it's good to share a platform with a celebrity of the magnitude of Joe Ageo. Without further ado, colleagues, the competency-based curriculum is a curriculum. I want to start from there because many times we join the discussion before unpacking the word curriculum. So perhaps the first thing to talk about is what is a curriculum? A curriculum embodies all those learning experiences that a student goes through at any given point of learning to be able to demonstrate expected, desired learning outcomes. Those learning experiences will include mainly three things: content, the pedagogy, the methodology of teaching that content, and usually that which we call the non-formal curriculum. For example, when you come to KCA, the setup of the institution, the environment, the ethics, the mien of the administrators, and the interaction that has been created is part of the non-formal curriculum. So when we talk about CBC, we are talking about a curriculum, that set of learning experiences, pedagogy and non-formal outcome, that emphasizes that which we want out of every cohort of learners at a given level. That which we want them to be able, Joe, to put it in very basic language, to do with that knowledge, those set of skills, and those set of attitudes. Joe, if you allow, that doing is because, emphasized because, research, engagement, and benchmarking has indicated that there's a possibility we have produced certain cohorts of learners at various levels who are not able to do that which we were taking them through to be able to do. 1 second before I stop so that you can ask the next question. As we talk about the competency-based curriculum today, a critical question is what other curricula exist in Kenya and beyond? And I want to say 844 is not one such curriculum. 844 defines a structure of education. The fact that we have 8 years of primary education, 4 years of secondary education, and 4 years minimum at tertiary education. So as we talk about the competence-based curriculum and which we have introduced, then we must think about what would the people in this place call, curriculum speaking, sets of learning experiences as I defined it. What is it we have been offering our people? And arguably, what we have been offering is knowledge-based curriculum. Some people call it examination-based curriculum. And because it has been reformed so many times, some of us simply don't know how to define it, technically speaking. And here, I acknowledge the presence of seasoned professors like Musili Kombo, Andrew Rieti, and all of us. One of the things we might want to do is to be able to give the 844 a technical name that could be used in any other international education forum. Yes, so CBC is about getting learners to do.
What you're talking about is quite interesting, because I was going to ask you to try and contrast that with what we have now. And if I understood you correctly, and I recognize that it's a professor who has been speaking, but if I understand you correctly, you're saying you're not very sure whether what we have been dealing with is actually a curriculum based on what you define.
Get me well, Joe. 844 is a structure. Just like we now talk about 2 years of pre-primary learning, 6 years of primary education. Yeah, so we can only compare 844 to that structure. But if you are talking about curricula, then for one word I would use to define what we are doing now is knowledge-based curricula. That is what we would be comparing with competency-based curricula.
Okay. Let me expand this a little bit to Dr. Rieti, because you've also been involved in quite a good part of this, and of course an education expert in your own right. What competency? I mean, when people hear competency-based, it's almost unthinkable that we'll be training people who are not competent in something. So this specification that what we are dealing with now is competency-based. Maybe you could try and break down what is that?
Thank you very much, Joy, for asking that question. I think if I have to add, I'll just add a bit to what Professor, the KSE director has said. Competencies. I think it is true that 844 was not about curriculum. It was about the structure of education, 8 years of education from primary, from 7 years, and there was a rationalization, let children grow, stay 1 more year, and so on and so forth. So it was not about a curriculum, which is a set of all those details that Charles explained, what is to be taught. So competency-based curriculum is about the way of delivering, right? Is the content and how it's to be delivered, so that the learners, the focus is more on outcomes and not outputs as in the previous system.
That's a lot of English.
All right?
Outcomes.
Outputs are things...
Maybe everybody in this room knows, but I'm just wondering.
Outputs are what Kenya's education system in the past has been focusing on, which we are running away from. In terms of enrollments, how many children are in which levels, in which classes, which firms, which universities, and so on. All right? How many take exams? How many scored what grades? We are talking about outputs. And that is why we have had a problem for a long time with graduates at different levels of education without skills to do anything. So, competency. They don't have any competency. It's unfortunate that maybe some of us may know, some may not know, that some of the engineers, civil engineers, who have been trained in some universities in Kenya were taught in classrooms or lecture rooms without exposing them to practicals, all right, so that they can understand, they can see how to make a road, all right? I'm not saying all of them, our civil engineers are not skilled, but a good number of them were taught in lecture rooms without being exposed to practicals in engineering labs, which in some of the universities are dysfunctional. And I'm talking as a researcher.
Yeah. And so, this thing you're calling outcomes. So
outcomes are what those graduates, those learners can do. And those things are specified in objectives of education at different levels. We call them level objectives. Early childhood development and education has objectives. Primary education has general objectives. Secondary education has objectives. But I'm telling you, or as I was taught by some Indians when I was doing PhD, I can tell to you only that even those who are teaching in our primary schools and secondary schools, and I can confirm that because we go and see some of our teachers who are on teaching practice, they do not know those objectives. Later on, knowing the national objectives of education. So, they are preparing graduates for exams so that they can get mean scores which are highlighted in schools. This year's mean score is this, outputs, and not competencies or outcomes, that they are well socialized, they can perform certain things, they are trainable, and so on and so forth.
Okay, that is very sobering. I mean, I'm beginning to question what I can do. But let's... because I passed through that system you're talking about. But Nanjan Kululu, let me just... I know I'll talk to you a lot more about the university part of this, but what is that process of knowing that, yes, we are getting people who can do ABCD, and the ABCD they can do is what we actually need to be done here? Because I think the PS talked a little bit about the relevance of what we teach and what the society therefore needs. So that there seems to have been a mismatch. How do we ensure there's congruence now between what they are being taught and what is needed?
Thank you very much, Mr. Geo. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my peers, Ambassador Simon Apokwezi, for giving me this opportunity to be a panelist, and also thank the KCA University for this wonderful arrangement. Actually, we have been longing for it, and we want to thank you for organizing. And we need more of this. In fact, we need a national conversation on this, especially at the university level. because I will say even before my peers that it seems as the CBC train left and the station and some passengers were left. It's the universities, passengers were left. So that's why we are grumbling and coming in a bit late. But this is a policy, educational policy, CBC, and it is to be implemented. So the gap, to answer your question, the mismatch that comes between what we are training and what is required is simply because we do not involve the industry. Whom are you training for? So you'll find that during the curriculum development, curriculum as it has been explained by the Director General, KICD, is complex. It requires so many stakeholders. And one of the key stakeholders when you are developing this competent-based education and training, I'll call it, you need the industry player because you are training for them and they are the shoe wearer. So how do we involve them during this at all levels of curriculum development? So we seem also just to develop the curriculum assuming that we know what is required. But the shoe wearer is not with us. So the linkage, you'll find that we are missing that link, especially the partnership with the industry, because I'll give you an example. You're going to train, for example, on a carburetor. And then you realize the industry has moved from the carburetor of a vehicle. It went to FI, and now we're having VTTI. Who knows better? It is the industry and the latest. So you are training a curriculum, yes, to give you the basics, but it's not relevant to the industry. So what we have been missing here is the partnership with the industry. Thank you.
Now, Professor, you talked about equipping these learners with skills that will help them in the world today. And the 21st century has been talked a lot about when people talk about CBC, equipping people with skills that can help them in the 21st century. What is it about this century that it requires new skills, and what are those skills?
Thank you very much, Joe. If any one of us were to Google, and today a number of us have smartphones, 21st century skills, it would give you words that are very close to what SKICD and with our stakeholders we have conceptualized as the key competencies. Generally, they are called soft skills. And this is what my brother Nanjakululis talked about. The industry today needs soft skills, broken down one into communication and collaboration. That we are not anymore in that context when you get knowledge, skills, and attitudes to serve you as an individual, to serve just a particular community or a particular country in the context of a very networked globe, then we need communication that goes beyond our small enclaves. One of the other things that it will give you is creativity and imagination. Joe, I bring on my seat now the experience of teaching at the university, and my colleagues, professors here, who teach even postgraduate students. Many students, even at PhD level, when they ask you a question, they want you to give them an answer. When you ask them, what do you think? They tell you, no, Mwalimu, I asked you a question. And one of the victims is when PhD students ask you, colleagues, for a research topic, and you tell them it is your study. What do you think? So a student of mine asked me one time, okay, Mwalimu, I want to ask you a question, but don't ask me what I think. So, but the problem is not at the university level. It's that we did not inculcate this at the basic level. So yes, 21st century involves people who can think on their feet, imagine how to solve problems in their context. Hence, the next one is problem solving and creativity. And I'll give you an example, a question that you might want to ask us later. I was trained as a teacher That's why Professor who was introducing us, if he did not say that I went to Siriba Teachers College, I would have a quarrel with you from here. And one of the things you are given as a teacher is that you will teach in various environments, which will present different problems, even in terms of learning. My PS talked about, for example, mother tongue interference, which these days we call first language superiority. So I am Luo if I say is going, because we have a problem with SH, it's just because my mother tongue is superior, my first language. It's not that there's a problem. But just to use that as an example, in different Kenyan contexts, for example, you will find that learners will present different challenges in terms of articulation, pronunciation, which have their way into writing, which have their way into meanings of words. Joe, you know contexts where just a difference in intonation can create a completely different meanings, and sometimes it can translate into an insult, which can even be embarrassing. So the next one I want to mention is digital literacy. A total 21st century skills that today, this fellow we call Mama Mboga in the parlance of politicians has a smartphone. They are able to track their customers, but most importantly, even their economic transactions, business and so on, is based on that which they can do digitally. It's important, and COVID has presented that situation more than anything else, that today in universities and even where we work, you are told keep thin staff because of the danger of infections. And so how do we do the rest of the business we are asked to do? We do it digitally. The challenge has been that the 21st century is presenting this, but we are not running to catch up. I'll stop there at that moment, but not until I mention citizenship. Joe, why is this as a 21st century scales? There is some renewed energy in every country identify that which propels them above any other country in the world and capitalizing on that, and therefore re-emphasizing the need to exercise our roles as citizens, including identifying our role in the development of that country. So you are asking the question, Joe, what do you do? Citizenship becomes very powerful because then it takes us back to reflect on what our forefathers said. What is it I can do through my profession for my country? Of course, realizing that you are a global citizen, you'll also be asking
what
is
I
it
was
you
going
can
to
do
ask. I mean,
for the globe?
How does that square with the fact that the world is globalizing in that sense that perhaps my daughter will not be confined to the professions I used to know, that she might be sitting here and working for someone in California?
Excellent question. If we were to do what a favorite word I have, problematize that word citizenship. You are talking to Professor Joe.
Yes, I am getting used to it now.
One of the levels of citizenship is global citizenship. Appreciating that I belong, but other people also belong, and it is not in all our practices, cultures, and activities that we may think about one way. So that citizenship emphasizes, if you look at our goals of education, there is a word called international consciousness. The fact that you are internationally conscious is as one of the key outcomes of citizenship that I talk about. So just to comfort you that we're not just talking about belonging to KICD or belonging to my village in Kochia or my county of Uasin Gishu. I am that kind of Kenyan, but also being Kenyan, being Africa, being global in the 21st century. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Dr. Richi, are we doing something that's not being done by anyone else? Who's doing what we are doing now?
What I know is one of the rationales for CBC or introducing CBC was ensuring that Kenya's education is consistent with the with education systems offered by countries in the region, and quite a number of countries are implementing CBC, including Rwanda, Uganda, quite a number, you know. So it is South Africa. There are quite a number of countries that have embraced CBC. Of course, there are reported challenges. That's not what we are discussing, but it is something that we should have done. And Joy and colleagues, I believe that Kenya would not be where we are had we embraced CBC as soon as we became politically independent. So the number, I could give you the specific countries if you allow me to check on my where I was giving where I was keeping those
If you allow me just 1 second, Joe.
Yes, bro.
Perhaps one way of asking the question is who is not doing? I can tell you without blinking my eyes
that will be your question.
The whole world,
you can answer
the whole world is doing CBC now, including the latest kid on the block, Southern Sudan, whom we were the people who are inducting now. Indeed, right now, one of the tasks I have added to my functions that the government has given is to guide other countries into imbibing CBC, the whole world practically. So the challenge will be who is not doing CBC. Thank you.
Interesting. And I want to come to you, sir, because we are now seated at a university, and right now the first cohort, I think, is in grade 6, and in the next couple of years, they are going to be coming here. So as someone who sits up there thinking about how this translates in these institutions of higher learning, what are some of the things you are thinking about right now? What are you telling the universities? What conversations are you having with them to prepare them for what's coming? Because they can't wait.
Thank you very much, Mr. Geke, for the question. One thing that we should appreciate that universities operate at slightly different environment. The environment under which universities operate is a bit dynamic and different from what the basic, I would say basic, operate, that is primary and secondary. So we have to bear in mind that since it is slightly different, the paradigm shift that we're going to have at the university so that the universities can be able to integrate CBC is a bit complicated and costly. Because one, this will require restructuring the way my peers had hinted. It will require a bit of restructuring the whole, like governance. The governance structure will slightly change. The quality assurance structure will slightly change. And even the funding has to change. So there will be a slight change. There will be some significant change at the university.
Those are not slight changes. Those are major changes.
As compared to perhaps basic. Because I've said the way universities operate, well, first of all, you look at the programs that are there and the way they are implemented. It is quite different from the basic. And some of the programs there to fit in CBC may be slightly difficult, especially looking at the three routes. If you look at social science, maybe slightly difficult to integrate. But in STEM, maybe easier. But what we are saying is that it may call upon us to have a change of attitude. And the change of attitude, especially at the university, that we need first is about those teaching. It's going to be not a walk in the park, especially the way we have been teaching all along. Because CBC requires, for example, the way Professor said, if you are to keep a portfolio of a student and you have 600 students and you're supposed to keep their portfolio, because it's not about examination anymore. It's about what you can be able to know and do. You know using knowledge and you're able to do, not to remember. So you keep a portfolio. So the rubric, for example, for evaluation has to change. And changing that rubric of evaluation, it's not easy. Because here now marks will not get lost.
So what's happening now? Because I mean there are many major changes that have to happen.
So what is happening what is happening is like what is happening now at KCSC. We have started the journey. We are on the journey. But we need, as I said, a national conversation where now we have to convert. You know, you have to preach and convert. Some of the teething problems that we are having at Basic is about quite a number are not converted. You need to convert, get the disciples. Then they appreciate that this is the way to go.
Maybe you can just break it down. What exactly do the universities need to change for them to fit into this new curriculum that is coming their way in less than 10 years?
The way the professor explained is about the curriculum. It's about curriculum. So we have to ask ourselves the content, the need. Is there a need? What do we need to teach? What do we need to teach now that CBC is coming? Do we continue teaching what we are teaching? So there will be a change. And then now, the content. Then how to teach it. And the biggest problem, the elephant in the room is how to teach it. And then now, how to evaluate. But what to teach we can get. What to teach we can get. But how to teach it and how to evaluate, based on the philosophy and the principles of CBC, that's where the problem is. And therefore, one of the things that we're going to try to do is, for example, is it possible to have a policy where all the lecturers have to go through pedagogical skills so that they can know how to teach it? So what we are trying to do, and then we are trying also to ask universities, especially facilities, modern state-of-art facilities, because some of them are obsolete, so that you can be able to implement CBC. So we are asking now the universities to improve in equipment, and then we also still have a very big problem, the staffing. Some universities you may find they only have 5 professors. So how do we improve the quality of the people who are delivering? Who will teach this curriculum? We still have that big challenge. We are still relying on, you go to a university, it has about 200 part-timers. That's the difference. That's why I'm saying the environment under which universities operate is quite different from Basic, and there are about to be changes.
And please remember that at some point you'll be helping me to ask all these questions, so better note down your question in detail, because as we've been reminded all afternoon, we are speaking to professors, right? So Prof, let me come to you. It appears that there is something big that has to change somewhere, almost a superstructure that has to change for us now to start getting it right with the individual universities. What is that thing? And Dr. Rachel, will come to you after this. What is that thing that, from where you sit, as you envision how this thing is supposed to pan out in the institutions of higher learning, what is that thing that needs to change first and foremost so that everything can fall in place? Is there such a thing anyway?
Thank you, Joe, and that builds upon what my brother Nanjakululu has said. The first thing I want to assure this audience, there is no tectonic movement. There is no huge animal that we have never seen that is coming to universities. It is basically a reorientation. Because if you talk to Professor Kombo here and other professors, the word competency has featured in education right from the times of Aristotle and Plato and all other philosophers. I remember long ago when I was doing my master's, 2003, I wrote a thesis on language communicative competence of learners. So that is the first point I want to say. But again, just emphasizing what my brother said, 5 key issues will always feature at every level of education. And this is what we need to relook at university level as the competency-based curriculum catches up with us. The first one which he mentioned is content. Now I'll go a little deeper and say what exactly will change in terms of content. That perhaps we at the university level have operated within some degree of rigidity in the way we package our content. And one of the things CBC is bringing on board is flexibility. As you know, the 844 curriculum, for example, at Form 4, there are 5 subjects, now we call them learning areas, that you must do and pass if you want any remote chance of going to the university because they are compulsory. So we have 2 sciences, we have maths, we have Kiswahili, and we have English. And our university programs have been modeled around the performances of learners at this level. Joe, you have some of your colleagues in journalism now who are medical doctors and who practice journalism very competently. In CBC parlance, we would say they are exceeding expectations. So what am I saying here? That we might have to arrange our programs in a way that offers learners various areas of expertise where they have shown competency so that we are not secluding them. For example, I'm a student of English language, basically. But some of my colleagues here, like Ngobi, I saw him somewhere, know that I'm also a performing artist. I am a choreographer of dances, for example. If you put me in a place where I can only learn how to teach English, and I have never having any experience of, say, performing arts, then perhaps I will have a problem. So that is something, just to give an example. The next issue in academics at all levels is pedagogy. And the Maxim colleagues, Joe, you know, as university level, we are called lecturers. So when you and I were in university, and perhaps up to now, I feel like standing up, a powerful lecturer is that who would stand up, talk to you for 10 minutes or even 1 hour, just saying things and asking you that if you don't remember, then you have very little memory and you're not likely to go very far. So ordinarily, I would go to class. I'm defining poetry, which basically is a piece of music. And I'll be telling my students, ladies and gentlemen, this is a highly concentrated utterance whose stylistic devices and intellectual persona and prowess exceed the normal way of communication. Poor first year would be struggling with what to do. But then, when they leave class, what would majority of them say?
A lecture.
In Dolu, they would say, yeah, that guy knows what he's doing. He's powerful. But what has the fellow learned?
Nothing.
So that is the point. That now the lecturer is going to be a guide on the side. I am teaching listening. That's one of the things we teach in language. I will go to class and give my learners an opportunity to listen. And then from there, learn how to listen. There's such a thing we teach in oral literature, those of us who are there, called songs. I mean, if I'm going to teach songs, then my students have to sing. I'm not going to give them the theories of singing as espoused by Jean-Jacques Rousseau and others. So that means that even as we reorganize our curriculum, content which I talked about, and we think about how to teach it, it's a question of how do we make sure that the curriculum invites learner participation. A third thing quickly, content pedagogy is teaching and learning resources. My brother mentioned it. We now have to think about, as universities, only inviting, only telling COOPs to give us students into programs for which we have resources. I spent some time in a department where we were teaching learners to be journalists, students at the university level. We didn't have even cameras. We didn't even have opportunities where they could write what looked like a letter to the editor and read it. We didn't have opportunities to be able to present them before cameras. Yes, we'll give them one tour around the country where we bring them to the standard citizen, and somewhere we lock them up in Titwande and say, now imagine you are a journalist. You are here overnight. What kind of news you have? So I think our colleagues at the universities, time is nigh. My peers talked about a linguistic lab. You are not going to ask COOPs to give you students of language if you don't have a language lab, for example. You're not going to have students coming in to do medicine when you know that the number you have invited, or as Margaret Ogola would put it, you don't have enough cadavers as a very basic competence. You're not going to have students coming to do chemistry when you don't have enough microscopes. So, and I think KCA is leading in this. So what is it we are saying? Universities, we shall need to create a niche for ourselves. What is it that I can identify KCA with? Because I know they have lecturers who are competent in that content. They have lecturers who are excellent in those pedagogies. And they have the infrastructure that will give us journalists who will leave that institution and go behind a camera, of course. The last one is assessment. Colleagues, I'm talking as one of you. Up to now, Joe, when you say the timetable for exam has come and students are coming, we are literally fighting some students at the entrance. Why are we fighting them? Trying to remove what is it they have carried? Cell phones and this famous Mwakenya. Mm-hmm. So we want to be able to have assessment integrated with learning to the extent that by the time somebody is graduating, you don't have to give them, pen and paper exams where you are asking them, how would you teach a language to a Form 1 class? Take them to a Form 1 class. Let them teach. As you have tools that will tell you, okay, this teacher is approaching expectations, meeting or exceeding. So those 5 things, content, pedagogy, resources, and assessment become very critical. Allow me to mention just one thing. I started with this when I was defining curriculum. The learning environment. Allow me to use my experience as a Cerebral Teachers College student, where we were all just teachers. In that place, the way you dressed, and we have it in the curriculum, the way you carried yourself, and the university provided an environment to monitor this mattered. So we must, our students who are here, universities must start, not prefecting our students, but remind us that the students must espouse the characteristics, the professional means that go with the profession they are getting into. Lawyers, for example, when you see them now in the Supreme Court, there's a certain way they dress. If you are going to be here in trousers that are just struggling to cover your back, so that your underwear written on Caterpillar is showing, or you have a t-shirt written on Gor Mahia, you will Jalu in the house, then there's no way you can say, I will learn how to dress later when I graduate as a teacher. You have to start learning that at the moment. So the learning environment that we create, Kabarak University is leading us in this. They have some value system that works with them. So I want to come to KCA and see what I see today. I saw people in groups at different corners. Professor Wakindiki, you are already trying. You hardly achieved this. And find people in groups, and they are serious. But not people who are carrying 2 bottles of beer on their back trouser pockets, and then we say, we are nurturing people to discover their potential. Which potential? Alcohol potential. Thank you, Joe.
Wow. Yeah, I think they should have a full session where you will just come and tell us about those 2 bottles. But now I understand. Now I understand where my problem as an editor comes from with some of the journalists. We will discuss that at some point. But Daktari, there is we're almost going to the audience, so get your question ready, I said. But there is something that Prof talked about here about how universities now start thinking about even specializing and all of that. And that used to be the case, but kind of changed along the way for reasons that are perhaps beyond this conversation. But the truth is that there will be practical issues to consider when you say this university should consider concentrating on this particular field and so on and so forth. As someone who is already in the frying pan, as it were, what do you see in the coming months, years, before we get to that point where you're receiving the first cohort, or the first CBC cohort coming in as first years?
Thank you, Joe. I think to begin my response to your question, I wish to remember what a UK researcher who was training KICD staff told one of them, related to me, that on CBC, that professor was training them on CBC, he said the problem with the way Kenya has gone is we started with raw materials and not the industry. So the industry, or an industry, is a group of business firms, all right, which are doing the same things or related things, and that's why universities can be grouped into an industry, call it of higher education institutions, as they are normally referred to. I think it is time that universities are this forum, begins begins a very serious sensitization. Universities need to start thinking about how to prepare, to prepare the teachers. And by the way, Joe and colleagues, even those ones who are there, professors, senior professors, and so on, need to be adequately trained. Right? It's not the title. It is the knowledge of CBC, about CBC and how it's transacted. One, there's a project that the University of Nairobi, where I teach, we are collaborating with the University of Helsinki in Finland on upgrading the pedagogical skills of lecturers in 20 universities in Kenya, including Pwani University, University of Nairobi, as well as Strathmore University, which are implementing that project. Very, very important. So universities need to start thinking collaborations. We need to benchmark, we need to understand what happens elsewhere. And in my contact fellow at the University of Helsinki says that she is a fine art lecturer. She was trained to teach fine art, right? But now she is using it to enhance creativity amongst the teachers that she is training, so that they can also go and do the same. So we need universities first. I am not ashamed to suggest or agree with some like-minded like me that Kenya does not need all the universities that we have. In fact, some of them are not, they can become, how do you call them? Institutes of applied something, like what happens in Finland. All right? So that we don't need more than 10 universities in this country. The rest need to be specialized in one thing. Could it be agriculture? Could it be dance? Could it be in sports and something? All right? And that debate was started some time back. And obviously, universities have been tribalized, except KCA. Congratulations. All right? We need to think about them. Otherwise, many of them don't qualify to be universities in my thinking.
Okay.
So they need to start thinking of how they are going to teach or to receive the graduates of CBC in around 2029.
When you're up here talking about dance and fine arts and football and all of these things,
competencies.
I'm thinking you should meet my primary school teachers, because they would have beaten the daylight out of you if you appeared to be spending more time out there than what they thought was the core business. But let me open this up now a little bit to everybody who's joining us here, because this is a conversation that I am sure will go on for a long time. But for this afternoon, we want to see how much we can cover. I'm sure that whatever the gentlemen up here have talked about may have triggered something in your mind, something you want clarified, or even if you just want to challenge them, because that's what they seem to like. Let's take a couple of questions. Yes, Prof, we'll start with you. Let me see how many other people have questions. Okay, so, just keep your hand up so that we organize this a little bit. So we'll start with Prof here, then we can take the gentleman there, then we can take the lady behind there. We start with those three, and then we take the next round.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Mine may not even be a question. If you allow me, I just wanted to add something to what my colleagues have said, and I'm very excited. The discussion has been healthy. And there's a question that you asked on how universities will operate. And I wanted to say, and this is my own thinking, that when Professor Fatuma Chege and his team, and our team, when they met, they gave the assignment to Commission for University Education for them to be able to spearhead this work of CBC, so that at least they can be able to bring the universities together, because that is where our policy is, that they can policy the universities, because they have the mandate. That task force of Professors Chege came out, and it was very clear that Commission for University Education should take the charge. And I'm just thinking that if they can be able to take charge, then we shall be home and dry, because they will be able now to dictate on what should be done. And I want to say that, if you allow me, I want also to say that this is a very good opportunity for all the universities. The unfortunate bit is that they have not taken their position, and history will judge the university very harshly. Because we have been given the opportunity by the government to be able now to review our curriculum, given that there are so many changes that are taking place. You look at the industries now, they are demanding certain skills, and the universities, some of them are not able to do that. Allow me, the moderator, to say that Kenyatta University seems to be the only university that has reviewed its curriculum, realigned it, and as I speak to you now, I was given the mandate to do exactly that. So we managed to realign all the curriculum. It is CBC compliant. We took it to Commission for University Education. So we are ready for the students. And I want also to say, as I speak and as I sit here, our students are now being taken through through CBC. So we are preparing so that when 2029, we will be able, not even 2029, 2024, we will be able to take our teachers there who are CBC compliant.
Okay.
So this...
Okay, very good.
And I just also want to say that my professor has just mentioned something. This UCUs, 21st century skills, they are really so critical. What we did, and I am even appealing to the other universities to do that, is that we have come up with UCUs, where we are now trying to pass it over. I may take time, and I feel so passionate about
that's the
this.
last point. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that the opportunity is there for us as universities to be able to take up the challenge, and some of us, we have really taken the bold step. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and I know Professor Kisili Kombo is very famous, but not all of us are. So please, if you get the microphone, just introduce yourself a little bit so that everybody else knows who's talking. Is that a good thing? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Hesbon Otieno, Deputy Secretary General, Kenya National Union of Teachers, but also an alumni of this college. And I want to congratulate myself, because when I became a trade unionist, I was a teacher in class teaching. But I realized that when I was getting into the field of trade unionism, I needed to understand what it means to handle human resource, so that we could discuss, when we are going to the negotiation table, then I would be able to exactly know what it is required to negotiate. And that is why I came to KSC University, and I did my BA here in human resource, and I proceeded to do my master's here. So I think the competencies that I have comes from KCA University. So I am the pioneer of competency-based curriculum, and I come here. Secondly, I was privileged to sit in the National Steering Committee on competency-based, and we were with Dr. Yechi in that committee. And it's very unfortunate, and this is what I want to bring out, that we really struggled to bring in the universities at the table when we were at the inception stage, to have universities participate in the conversation of the curriculum reform. So what I'm now saying, The curriculum reform has reached grade 5, and we are soon going to grade 6, and exams are going to be done. And we have 6 years for the universities to just conform if they want to come in and take the first cohorts of those people who will be joining in 2029. And there's no shortcut to that. The areas of the pathways are well clearly stipulated, they are known. When we talk about arts and sports, science, when we talk about social sciences, and when we talk about STEM, they are well stipulated, they are known. So for the universities to be relevant, they have just to now start picking their areas of specialization when the students will be transiting to university education. So there is no shortcut to that.
Thank you.
And just the last one. On the competencies of the lecturers, also now the lecturers need to move out of the lecturing and come in. I know, having sat in a lecture room where we had lecturers coming up with the old notes, reading through the notes and telling us, write this, note down this. They now need to come out and now try and package themselves to an area where they will be dealing with bringing in the competencies as they are required. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And let's keep it brief. I had more latitude for them because there must be a reason why they are seated in front. But from now on, let's keep it brief and so that we save a bit of time.
Okay, my name is Dorothy. I'm a part-time lecturer and also an alumni of KCA. My question will come in as a parent of a CBC pupil, let me say that. And we're talking about curriculum-based, competency, yeah? And we want to upgrade the skills of the children. So we want them to have skills that are relevant and sustainable in the 21st century, yes? So that technology has changed the world and made it a global village, yes? For my child who's doing a project of probably going to the market, putting on a sackcloth to sweep the market, how is he supposed to compete globally with a child in China who's creating a mobile application to solve a need in the society? So the issue, I think, with the parent that should be tackled or maybe discussed about is what skills are we upgrading? Are these skills that are progressive and relevant in the 21st century? Are we progressing or are we retrogressing? Okay. That is the concern. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we can respond. The two are basically comments. You can comment on them quickly, but then there is a question there. So we can start with you, Prof.
Thank you.
They're all pointing at you.
Thank you, Joe. Very quick comment on Professor Kombo. Even this morning, at KICD, we were hosting the Commission for University Education as part of a series of meetings to bring universities on board more robustly. But I also want to say that, like when Professor Kombo talked about Kenyatta University, a lot of universities are taking initiatives now involving us and the Ministry of Education to be able to discuss how we can fully integrate CBC. And what KSCA has done, I hope, is just the beginning. So thank you very much. For Hesbon, allow me, Joe, to congratulate him. What he's not saying is that it's the latest addition to the KICD Academic Committee. There is a multi-sectoral body at KICD that approves any curriculum that is supposed to go out there. And KNUT, that is important for me to emphasize, so that, Joe, when you host another person who says they were not involved, you have heard him by his own mouth saying he was in the steering committee that gave birth to CBC. Allow me also to acknowledge somebody else. Dr. Spotter is a member of the Kenya National Examinations Council, and he knows that even at that level, there are a lot of efforts to involve universities. Now, Dorothy, thank you very much for the question you are raising, and I'm happy that you are a lecturer at university level. One of the things I don't do with my colleagues at the university is mince my words. that at the university we seem to lock ourselves in some corners and think that we should be taught by what our students know. It's a bit simplistic to isolate one activity in which children are involved and call it retrogressive and not look at it in its totality. When you see children go into a market, there are a lot of things that if you are an educator, you will study and identify have gone place. One of them is that you will see a lot of improvisation. These children will have improvised wheelbarrows, they will have improvised gloves, they will improvise many things. But the other critical thing is that the process itself is environmental conservation. The ordinary Kenyan goes to a market, think about any market in Nairobi here, eats a banana or whatever it is and throws it around. What is the child at CBC saying? That I'm so self-sensitized as a learner now, as a problem solver, as a creative thinker, that I need to be part of cleaning that bucket where people go. So the child is teaching that adult something. That is not to say that they don't have a lot of other activities that entail what we call digital literacy. So one of the things, Joe, if you're asking me, I want to challenge all my colleagues at the university. By the way, allow me to ask a question. How many of us, genuinely speaking, because you are also speaking to God, have read the basic education curriculum framework? How many of us here, Joe, I hope you're looking at the numbers, have seen any curriculum design, what we used to call a syllabus, in the CBC? Very good. And now we have a few hands. Professor Wakindiki, bring me here. Hey, Danny, stand up. My officer from KSCD, we are branded there. We bring us here to bring you curriculum designs and take your people through. What is the point here? Is that in all curriculum designs, picking from the basic education curriculum framework, in all topics, which we call strands and sub-strands, there are a lot of suggested learning experiences at different times. So you may only have seen one practical learning experience, but when you read that curriculum, you will see provision for all the other anticipated learning experiences, including that last week, you saw them doing Cultural Week and doing a lot of things. That Cultural Week also includes modern cultures. So visit any primary school today, and Hesbon can confirm, and you will see corners where they demonstrate a lot of other activities that they are doing. Some of them are recorded, and I can invite you also to KSCD. You don't have to come physically, because there's something called the Kenya Education Cloud, www.kenyaeducationcloud.kscd. You will be exposed to a lot of other opportunities on what our learners are doing practically that you will marvel at. So my warning to universities, as Joe nods his head, the child coming to us in 2029 by way of some politicians is a tsunami. They are so used to doing things, demonstrating, being taught practically, that if you were to lecture them for 5 minutes, they'll tell you, Mwalimu, this we can do for ourselves. Thank you, Joe.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Remember, this conversation is also being followed online by quite a number of people who've joined us, and they are taking part in this conversation. And I'll ask 2 questions that have already been sent, and we'll take 2 more from the audience, and then we answer them and see how much time we have left. So one question that has been asked by an online participant in this meeting is, I teach mathematics at unit level. How do I teach ordinary differential equations or topology using competency-based education and training? That is first question. Second question, how are we prepared towards the pathways like the one of sports and fine art? And they explain what they mean. World over, for instance, sporting has an age limit, like in soccer, it's about 30 and people retire. Where will they end up after that age? Coaches, refereeing, where? Those are 2 questions we're getting from our online audiences, and you can keep them coming. Let me get 2 more questions from the room. We had many that side, so let's come this side. There's a gentleman here. Please introduce yourself. And then there is a lady here. I'm very conscious that I don't have too many ladies up here, so I'm and I'm just being polite. Okay, so let's start there, and then we can go to the lady. Please introduce yourself and ask your question. Make it brief.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Dr. Ibrahim Tirimbo Ndabu. I'm a full-time lecturer, again, the director of Town Campus. I'm happy to be here in this forum. I've been able to learn a lot, especially from Dr. Andrew, talking about we are producing output instead of we are supposed to produce an outcome. My point of interest, I've been trying to engage my students whenever I teach them, mostly at the 3rd year, trying to find out from them, especially in a small group, what do you want to become? And part of them, they even tell me they do not know what they want to become when they're remaining with 1 year to graduation. And in that environment, I've been able to get one response from an IBM student, International Business Management, that he wants to become an engineer, but is not doing the right training to becoming an engineer. What can be done probably at the intermediate level, probably the high school level, in order to ensure that we are able to polish on the issue of career identification to ensure that they get to the right track.
Thank you, thank you. Yes. By the way, are there students here? Because I can see that the students are not asking questions. Okay, so the next round, which will be brief, I'll give affirmative action to the student.
Thank you very much. My name is Audrey Kubwa, Registrar KCA University. I want to take an opportunity to appreciate this discussion. And I want to say that last year in December, we as the registrars of universities in Kenya, we have an association called ARUC. We had a workshop in Mombasa. And one of the topics was discussing about CBC in higher education. What came out very clearly is that universities are yet to be prepared adequately to transition these students who are coming, the pupils coming from the high schools to universities. Another thing that we noted is the grading system. Right now, the competency-based considers meet expectations, exceed expectations, but we want to understand the objectivities behind it so that as universities try to realign their curriculum to that and assessment, how are we going to grade the students as well in higher education? The thing is this, that you realize with the competency based on meet expectations or exceeded expectations is based on an individual perception of the student. Can we find a way that that becomes more objective? How do we make sure we have quality systems to ensure that the assessments will be met with the threshold that is required? We lastly request as ARUC, the Association of Registrars of Universities in Kenya, to have sessions with the KICD and also the Commission for University Education, because we need to have policies in place to help us develop and realign ourselves adequately. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Who wants to have a go? There's a question of on mathematics and topology and all of that. Then there's a question on sports before we come to career identification and the objectivity in the assessment. Dr. Rechi, which one do you want to attempt?
Maybe on assessment.
And let's make the responses brief also. Thanks.
I think we need to embrace everything CBC, right? So we need, the universities need to move away from the normal exams to exams that test competencies, all right? There's assessment of learning and there's assessment for learning. So universities are at a point where I think for us, for them to make an impact in the education sector as well as the economy of Kenya and the region, they have to do things differently. So I think that's what I can say briefly.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. One thing that I would say is that for career guidance, for example, We have a whole State Department that is charged with that. It's called Post-Training and Skills Development, and they have developed a lot of materials on career guidance, and I'm sure even a circular went to the universities, that each universities to actually operationalize their career guidance offices, and if they need some guidance or some training, they can be given. But
his question was, how do you do that even earlier? Because someone is here studying business, but they want to be an engineer. It does appear that something should have happened earlier.
What has happened is that, as it was said earlier, career guidance in basic education seems to be, I don't want to say dead, but very low.
Okay.
And even those who are supposed to guide, they don't know what they're supposed to guide. Because it is not taken seriously. Because when you go to Teacher Service Commission and you want promotion, what they are looking at is your grade. Did you get A or B? It's not how many students you guided. So it's not a priority. So there's a lot of concentration on academics. And therefore, as we were saying, soft skills have been thrown out through the window.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Prof?
Yes.
It looks like all the questions that are remaining are yours.
Very, very briefly, the mathematics teacher of ordinary differential equations, there are three things that you need to go and look at. One is the curriculum design. It breaks down the topics and the subtopics. Look at the teacher's guide and also look at the handbook as a starting point. Professors are here. The maxim we normally tell our students is, don't give your students answers they can find for themselves. I'm referring them to the resources that they need. Preparations towards pathways. The basic education curriculum framework identifies percentages that the country hopes to achieve in STEM, that is sciences and technology and mathematics, in social sciences, and then in sports. And this is based on KIPRA's, KIPRA is a research institute, analysis of where Kenya needs to be in the 2030. And that's something, again, you can get in the basic education curriculum framework. So it is not that we shall flood or we seek to flood this country with people who are specialized in sports at the expense of other areas. I think, Ibrahim, Dr. you ask a very critical question. CBC has provided for this. One of the critical reasons for introducing junior secondary is that the research led by our colleagues here, which led to CBC, identified one main gap. That you cannot have people leave primary school where the knowledge they should have are only two: literacy, numeracy, and life skills. And then you are telling them, go to the university, go to Form 4 and choose a career. But even as they go to high school, you have not given them choice on how to specialize. So that is the hallmark behind junior secondary. Can we expose learners to a broad spectrum curriculum for 3 years, during which they try out that which they might want to do? If you read Jean Piaget's cognitive developmental theory, at age 12 to age 15, that's the age at which learners get wild. If you ask them what they want to do at that time, tomorrow they want to be a policeman, the next day they want to be a neurosurgeon, another day they want to be a journalist. So give them that time to read around, and then by the end of year 9, they are almost settling based on their potential and ability on what they want to do at senior secondary, which will lead them to their careers. Finally, Madam Audrey, Registrar.
Yeah.
Madam, you are a typical university person because you are waiting to be prepared on how to integrate CBC. The universities, Professor Kidiki, I hope I'm right, our mission is to teach, do research, and community or extension services. The role of KICD is to advise the government on all matters curriculum up to the tertiary level. Universities take charge. So don't wait for anybody to prepare. You don't even wait for us to call you for an engagement. Instead, we are waiting for you to engage us. And that includes the university's interpretation of the rubric in examination. What does it help you with if I tell you a learner is scoring 60% in English language? So the issue of exceeding expectation, meeting expectation, or approaching is not arbitrary. If you look at the curriculum designs and the rubric under each, There are clear skills on every strand that a child has to demonstrate for you to be able to mark them as meeting or approaching. And this is the orientation we have been giving primary school teachers. So your child, if you have one, I do have a CBC child. I'm not going to work so hard for this curriculum and I don't benefit directly. So I have a CBC child.
But she's asking about the
They carry a portfolio.
The objectivity of it.
Yes, that is what I'm saying, that it is not random. It is not perceptive. There are clear criteria on when, if a child is listening, can I say at PP1, based on the outcomes at that level, shall I say they are exceeding expectations? For example, they can, I'll give you a very cheap example. They can maintain eye contact. People who are doing languages here, eye contact is a powerful demonstration that somebody is listening to you. For example, they can recall, Joe, there is if I want to say a child is exceeding expectations in reading at grade 6, are they able to recall information? Are they able to apply that information, synthesize, analyze, evaluate? So there's a criteria. If a child at that level is able to evaluate, they tell you a passage like Okonkwo was known throughout the 9 villages of Umofia and even Baino. Very simple. So the child is able to tell you the fact that, well, he was known in Baino but not in other places. They are able to evaluate. That child is exceeding expectations. Yet maybe what you wanted the child to do, to say they are meeting, is simply can they recall. So there are parameters. And this is one of the things we wanted to adopt at the university. Don't give the fellow just a first-class degree when they can't go to class and teach. Were they exceeding your expectations as a teacher or as any other professional? So there's criteria.
Okay, let's get the 2 students only because we are really, really running out of time. Yes, and there are 2 gentlemen here. And the one next to him is the next one. Make your question brief.
Thank you, Joe. I'll try and be as brief as a cock on a hen. And to ask my question is...
His name?
Ambassador...
What's your name, sir?
Oh, I'm Willis Koi, a student of public management and yet to be an alumni. While Ambassador Simon was talking, he really emphasized on matters about attitude, and this comes to change and improvement. And we all know that change are as a result of decisions, and decisions have consequences. The question that I want to ask is that we as a country, are we ready to embrace the consequences or face the consequences that come with this decision that we want to make in the education sector? The consequences in terms of budget, the budget, the requirement, and the prerequisite that we need to implement this curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm Joab Odhiambo, taking Bachelor of Education Arts. I'm a 4th year. My question goes to Professor. As outgoing teachers and 3rd-year teachers who are training, CBC has got us while we are still studying in the university. When we go out, what do you have for us? Yes. Or are we still going to go back to TPD?
Okay, there's a lady here. I'll just use the powers conferred on me here. So please, let's have a question as the last one, and then we'll have a round of closing remarks here as I answer those questions.
Yeah, my name is Grace Mabishi, and mine is a bit political. Because as the first professor spoke, he said actually that so many countries adopted CBC long time ago, even South Sudan. I hate being last, and I'm wondering, how come we are being the last ones? Why? Yes, why? I want to know why.
Okay. Thank you. That was the last question, and it's asking why we are last. Do you want to start there?
Yes, allow me to start, Joe. Willis, you are very smart. That's what we are talking about, the kind of student we want in the 21st century. Ready to embrace the consequences? Let me unpack this, Joe. that even the curriculum we are running now has budgetary implications. And I can assure you that there are no extreme budgetary implications that come with CBC that we do not have now. This government already is paying teachers, buying books for every learner, and of course the fact that teachers are not enough is not just a CBC problem. So I can assure you there is no curriculum that has no budgetary implications over and above what CBC requires. And yes, the country is prepared. I think a lot of effort is in place. For example, now you've seen classrooms being built for junior secondary, which is yet to take place next year. A very mature question, and thank you very much for it. CBC has caught up with Odhiambo and his colleagues in third year. We will be doing what we are doing with primary school teachers now, inducting you. And Joe, this is critical. By the end of your training as a student of education at KCA, you will have all that it takes to teach any curriculum, including CBC. The problem has been that the current curriculum we are running has given us reason to emphasize on drilling learners. But I believe at KCA, one of the things that is being emphasized is your ability to engage learners using participatory pedagogies. This is what my colleague lecturers here in education, when they come to see you on teaching practice, will be looking for. Indeed, Joe, one of these days going to a teaching practice class, accompany these lecturers. The student teacher is struggling, usually, to demonstrate to the lecturers that they can engage learners. And that is what CBC is looking for. So don't go ye out there and get worried that there is some strange animal. The content is the same, usually just broken down differently. Emphasis is on learner-centered pedagogies. But on top of that, we shall orientate you on inculcation of values, pertinent and contemporary issues, and other elements that may not be emphasized now in your curriculum. And Madam Grace, we are at grade 6. We spent many years, and grade 6 means of primary. So if you start from pre-primary, it means that we have done 8 years of CBC. We spent quite a number of years conceptualizing it. Unless the fact that you hear some people say we are surprising ourselves, there were many years spent in conceptualizing this. So we are a lot ahead, by the way, of all the East African countries, including Rwanda, which is at grade 4 now. Tanzania is at grade, still in a pre-primary. Uganda is, they started and then they collapsed somewhere. So we are ahead of the pack, even as we say the others have adopted. However, different countries will use different names for different elements of CBC that they are doing. So you said that you want to make it political. Yes, politically we are very well positioned. Kenya is thoroughly litigant, and we appreciate the questions being asked. But as usual, we are far ahead of the pack. One example I want to give you is that out of all these East African countries, and even the entire Africa, we are the only country that has now gone into competency-based teacher education. We are the only country that has now done away with the certificate level as the minimum entry point for pre-primary teaching and primary teaching. So watch this space. 3 years down the line, nobody will be in our schools that does not have a minimum of a diploma. And even for practicing teachers, those who have P1 and certificates, we are the only country, I think almost in the world, Joe, that has created an upgrade program for people who originally had P1 to be able to transform into a diploma curriculum. We have copies at KSCD that you may want to look at. So we lead as others follow. Joe.
Okay, so there is one last question here from Dr. Samuel Moredi, who is the Director of Academic Affairs at Easter University. It's a PhD, so that's why I'm reading this. So we'll finish with this. Universities are approved and supervised by the CUE. What is the relationship between that Commission for University Education and KICD? Looks like it's directed at you. And what role does CUE play in CBC implementation in the universities? I think it was touched a little bit earlier. So kindly focus on the first one, and then you give your last word, then we finish.
Thank you. CUE regulates and audits university programs. KICD regulates and audits basic education and tertiary programs. Let me put it in summary that way. But we are engaging with CUE now very, very regularly in a view to make sure that there's a merger or an understanding of what takes place at basic education in relation to higher education. My last remarks, my colleagues at the university, I want to appeal to us that we develop more interest in basic education, and that includes especially registrar, DVCs, that includes engaging institutions at that level that are charged with a view to integrating what is necessary there at your level. However, remember that at the university level, you are charged the responsibility of developing your own curricula. Please follow the entire curriculum development cycle, even as we do it at basic education. Thank you very much. God bless you. I hope for more interactions.
Thank you. My closing remarks will be one of the things that the ministry would like to see happening, because it's not happening. And that one has discouraged even Kenyans to go for what we call lifelong learning, because even CBC at the end, we are looking for the 3 L's. LLL, lifelong learning. Reason is we have not practiced what we call RPL, recognition of prior learning. At the university level, I come with my national higher diploma, and you are still asking me to go to first year to sit with somebody who has just come from nowhere. That means knows nothing. And me, I've done electrical engineering, but you tell me to sit. So is there a way how RPL and therefore credit transfer can be integrated in this CBC, that we can encourage even people, I want to say, from informal sector to come to the university? If I've been doing welding or some activity out there and people say it is good and I want to continue learning, why should I not go to the university? Thank you.
Okay.
My parting shot would be about 3 points. One, it is time that universities considered areas of excellence, what they can have ability to deliver in. It is time. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem, and that's why China converted over 600 universities into into TVET institutions. Number two, to our very brilliant student here of education, I did not know that KCA University is offering B.Ed. It will be helpful that, and now I'm talking to all the students who are here and who may be watching us. What the documents, like the basic education, basic curriculum,
education curriculum framework.
Yes, it's that document that was developed and highlights a lot of information about CBC, and many other documents are available on the KICD website. And you go, once you open that KICD website, go to CBC link, and there are many documents there, including that one. So let's familiarize ourselves, including lecturers who may not have done that. And finally, I would encourage universities that are offering B.Ed to ensure that their students who are about to graduate at least are sensitized on CBC, to avoid them going out there, and then KICD will be doing what they call sensitization, 1 or 2 days, telling them, and then they say they have trained them which
That's
is not
actually TSC.
realistic.
All right, thank you very much. I think that's a good place to end this conversation. And I say end here just because we had a session here. Obviously, this is a conversation that will continue for many years to come. Special thanks to my guests over here, right next to me, of course, Professor Ngondo, CEO, KICD. Next, Nanja Kululu, Director of University Education at Ministry of Education, and of course, Dr. Richi from the University of Nairobi. Special thanks, of course, to our hosts here, Professor Wakindiki and the entire team. Thank you very much for hosting this wonderful conversation, and of course, the audience without whom we would not have had a conversation, including our online audience, wherever you're joining us from. So thank you very much, and let's call it a day, but let the conversation continue. Thank you.
And thank you too, Joe Aguero. Thank you for what you have done.
Thank you, Joe. I was expecting you to trademark.
All right, thank you very much.
You also have a quote.
Thank you very much. Special thanks again to Joe Aguero for facilitating this interesting discussion, which I strongly believe is going to continue, as well as the panel members for the incisive contribution to this area of CBC and competency-based curriculum. I mean, so that we can bring in our ideas into how we are going to improve teaching and learning in university education. Professor Charles, I want to be in good books with you. On line 12 and 13 of paragraph 2, I did say that you are an alumni of Sriba Teachers College. And I did that. And now that you are given as a challenge as a director, Center for Teaching and Learning, I'll be knocking your door quite soon. Thank you very much for that. We are going to go to the next session, and that is a vote of thanks, followed by a closing prayer. And I'd like to invite Dr. Priscilla Gachege, the Dean, School of Education. The student leader. We have the student leader to do the vote of thanks, and then from there, Dr. Priscilla Gachege, the Dean, School of Education, will give us the closing prayer. After that, our guests can leave at their own leisure. So, karibu. The student? Oh, anakuja. Oh. You're good?
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I take this opportunity on behalf of KCA University to appreciate all of us for awesome and informative session that has just ended. Our heartfelt gratitude goes to Ambassador Simon Nambukwesi, Professor Achieng Ngondo, and Dr. Andrew Riek for creating time in their busy schedule to come and participate in this important event. We express our sincere thanks to Ambassador Simon Nambukwesi for giving us an excellent coverage on the area of competency-based curriculum. I can gladly say that we are now better informed. As a university, we also wish to extend our gratitude to the CEO, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, for his guidance on the direction to take in the area of competency-based curriculum. To you, Dr. Andrew Riek, I say thank you for shedding light on so many areas that were not very clear to us before. Our hearty thanks equally go to our Vice Chancellor and CEO, Professor Wakindiki, for the logistics support and guidance in ensuring that our event was a success. To the rest of us, thank you very much for gracing the occasion. The staff and students was joined us physically and remotely. We sincerely appreciate your presence. Lastly, to the organizing team and the program directors, Thank you for your involvement and willingness to take up tasks and execute in a timely manner. Once again, I want to state that we are all most grateful, all our guests on this stage. It's been a great pleasure. May God bless all of you. Thank you and welcome to you all.
Good evening, everyone. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Our dear Lord, we bow before thee this evening with a lot of thanksgiving in our hearts for all that has been accomplished in this important event. We sincerely thank you for all our guest speakers and for the fact that we have gathered a lot of knowledge from them. We attest to the fact that we will not perish for lack of knowledge. Inspire them more so that they may keep sharing with others to the glory and honor of your name. We pray that what we have learned may bear fruits in our lives and for others as well. Let it be a catalyst to enable us to move forward as we bring it to execution. We commit our institution into thy able hands and pray that you may bless our Vice Chancellor, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, and every other person who serves the university in one way or another. Bless us as we work towards becoming a referral university. We thank you for all our guests and for everyone who has graced our event. And as we part, disperse us with your love. We pray this believing and trusting in Jesus' mighty name. We trust and believe. My name is Dr. Priscilla Gashegi, the Dean, School of Education, KCA University.
Thank you very much again. Dear colleagues of the academia, we are done with today's event. And from here now, the corporate team will guide the guests on the next course that we need to take. So, Lucy, kindly, yeah, you can give us a guide on the next agenda, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having graced us this afternoon, honoring our invitation to participate and to be the panelists. From here, the panelists will proceed to Vice Chancellor's office for official dispatch. The rest of us, you are free to leave at your pleasure. Thank you. So we'll lead the I-table, I will lead the panelists to the Vice Chancellor.
A world-class university, a premier business and technology university of choice. KCA University is the successor to Kenya College of Accountancy, a company incorporated in the Republic of Kenya on the 11th of May 1989 as limited by guarantee.
So in 1989, we were able to launch the Kenya College of Accountancy with the support of ODA, the British government support.
Given my role in the Education Committee of ISPAC, I was then appointed to the board of the college, which was a college training accountants and accounting technicians.
The college started off the operations in July 1989 in rented premises at the Westlands area of Nairobi with an initial student enrollment of 179. Over the years, the college witnessed rapid growth in student numbers, necessitating relocation in 1996 from Westlands to a more spacious facility at Paramount Plaza in Ngara area. The institution relocated again in 1997 to its current location at Ruaraka along Thika Road. The college applied and fulfilled all requirements of the Commission for Higher Education to be awarded university status. On the 1st March 2013, KCA University received its charter and has gradually increased the number of students. Enrollment currently stands at over 15,000, which includes students placed through Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service. KCA University offers certificates, diplomas, and degrees at undergraduate and postgraduate levels with effect from 26 July 2007. KCA University boasts of a modern instructional facilities and an ultra-modern library which seats 1,500 and provides access to an extensive collection of books, periodicals, magazines and journals, audiovisuals materials, and electronic databases. The Martin Oduor Otieno Library has an inbuilt network link and reliable wireless internet that facilitates research and academic discourse on a global platform. To make campus interesting and memorable, the university administrations work closely with the Student Association of KCAU, SACU, to ensure all students feel part and parcel of all outside class activities. The students participate in various sporting activities of their interest to grow their talents and special interests. Our strategic plan 2019 to 2023 projects 4 strategic pillars. A British Council report in 2016 in Kenya, Nigeria and Ghana ranks KCA as a top private university through a study on graduate employability.
We will not be pursuing just numbers, but we want to be pursuing quality aspects in whatever we engage in to make this a referral university. KCA is going to be one of them. In the coming few years, this shall be a referral university in the Republic of Kenya and, if possible, in the region.
Despite the COVID-19 related disruptions, we've remained focused, unshaken, and with the new face of leadership. We are an indomitable force that cannot be stopped. Unto the great heights. KCA University, a premier business and technology university of choice. A world-class university, a premier business and technology university of choice. KCA University is the successor to Kenya College of Accountancy, a company incorporated in the Republic of Kenya on the 11th of May 1989 as limited by guarantee.